Summary of The Martian by Andy Weir. The Martian starts with Mark Watney's Sol 6 log entry. Watney is an engineer and scientist on NASA's Ares 3 journey to Mars. Watney says that the group was meant to stay on Mars for a month, but they had to cut the trip short. This was because a sandstorm with strong winds threatened to damage the MAV, which the crew needed to get back to their ship, Hermes. As the crew moved from the HAB to the MAV, the HAB satellite communications dish was blown through the air, and its wire cut into Watney's EVA suit and went through his side. Watney passed out. The rest of the crew thought he was dead, so they went back to Hermes. They left Watney on Mars with no way to talk to the ship or to NASA. After Watney woke up, he went back to the HAB, the mission's base on Mars, took care of his wounds, and started to think of a way to stay alive until NASA could arrange a rescue. Watney shares his food and figures out how to grow it on Mars. Watney, who was in charge of the mission's plants, brought a small amount of Earth's dirt with him. He starts saving his poop and food scraps to use as compost, and then he mixes the compost with soil from Mars and soil from Earth to make crop soil. Most of the meals on the mission are freeze-dried, but NASA sent a few whole potatoes that the crew planned to use for a Thanksgiving dinner. Instead, Watney grows the potatoes in the HAB and in 2 emergency pop tents that are attached to the mission's rovers. Watney looks through the media files that the other people on the team brought with them to pass the time. He begins to watch Commander Lewis' old TV shows from the 1970s and listen to her dance music. Watney needs to make water so that he can water the crops. He uses the HAB's oxygenator to turn the MAV's power plant's carbon dioxide into oxygen. Then, he turns the hydrazine fuel into nitrogen and hydrogen so that the hydrogen can burn slowly in oxygen, which makes water. At first, it seems like Watney is making water, but he soon learns that not all of the hydrogen has turned into water because some of it is still in the HAB's air. Hydrogen is very explosive, so this is a very dangerous situation. Watney has turned his home into a big bomb. Watney fixes this problem by tricking the HAB's oxygen control into taking all the oxygen out of the HAB. He uses a tank of oxygen to burn off the hydrogen in controlled bursts while wearing a spacesuit. The story then switches to a third-person omniscient narrator on Earth, where NASA Director of Mars Operations Venkat Kapoor and NASA Administrator Teddy Sanders have just returned from Watney's funeral. Venkat wants to look at the damage and see if any of the goods left over from the Ares 3 mission could be used for the Ares 6 mission, which hasn't been paid for yet. Teddy at first says no, saying that pictures of Watney's body would only lead to more bad news. Venkat, however, says that the pictures could actually sway public opinion and, by extension, Congress, in favor of a 6th trip to Mars that could recover Watney's body. So does Teddy. When SATCON worker Mindy Park looks at the pictures and doesn't see Watney's dead body, she knows he is still living. She tells Venkat, and he sets up a meeting with Teddy and Annie Montrose, who is in charge of media relations. They decide that they will tell everyone in 24 hours. Teddy decides not to tell Commander Lewis because he thinks the news could confuse the Ares 3 crew and put their safety at risk. Even though they can't talk to Watney directly, NASA starts following him with satellite images and making a plan to save him. CNN starts a daily news show called the Mark Watney Report. It's the most important story in the world. The book is again written in the form of a log. Watney has made plans for each day and is growing potatoes well. His new goal is to figure out how to get to the Ares 4 MAV, which is 3,200 kilometers away in the Schiaparelli crater. He will have to cross the mostly flat Acidalia planitia and then the rougher land that is left. To do this, he will have to make the rover ready for a long journey. After a few short test runs, Watney plans to heat the rover with a box of highly unstable radioactive plutonium called an RTG, radioisotope thermoelectric generator. NASA uses RTGs to power robotic probes and to power the MAV before the crew arrives on the Ares missions. Commander Lewis took the RTG away and buried it when the Ares 3 crew arrived. Watney digs it up and takes it to the rover. Once the changes to the rover are done, Watney starts making plans for a 20-day trip. Watney tells us that he has a clear plan for the trip, but he doesn't say what it is. On Earth, Mindy goes to a meeting with Teddy, Venkat, Annie, JPL director Bruce Ng, and Ares 3 flight director Mitch Henderson, who are all in charge of NASA. Teddy's choice not to tell the Ares 3 crew that Watney is still living is questioned by Mitch, but Teddy doesn't change his mind. The team talks about how they will keep Watney living long enough for rescue by making the Ares 4 pre-supply probe more quickly and sending it to the Ares 3 spot. Later, after looking at satellite images and mapping Watney's coordinates, Mindy and Venkat learn that Watney is heading to Pathfinder, an unmanned probe that NASA lost touch with in 1997. If Watney can get the ship's contact device to work, he will be able to talk to NASA. Back to Watney's log, the story goes. When he gets to Pathfinder, he puts the small Sojourner rover and the bigger Pathfinder probe, the part with the radio, on the rover. After Watney gets back to the hab, he fixes the Pathfinder and the Sojourner. A signal is picked up by Pathfinder. On Earth, the NASA staff has a party. Watney and NASA start talking to each other through a complicated method that uses Pathfinder's camera. Soon, software engineer Jack Trevor figures out how to hack Pathfinder's software so that Watney can send and receive emails in the rover. Teddy tells Mitch that he can tell the crew of Ares 3 that Watney is still living. Weir moves the story back to the morning of Sol 6 to show how the rest of the Ares 3 crew saw the weather and what seemed to be Watney's death. Then Weir goes back to the present, where the crew of Hermes gets a voice message from Mitch telling them that Watney is still alive. Most of the team is very happy, but Lewis feels bad that she gave the order to leave Watney behind. Watney is glad to be able to talk to NASA, but now he feels like NASA is telling him how to do his job. When Watney leaves the hab through airlock 1 on Sol 119, the hab's canvas tears, separating the airlock from the rest of the hab. Watney fixes the hab over the next few days, but the earth and young potato plants are dead. Since the potatoes are dead, he only has enough food to last until Sol 600, when the supply probe arrives. Back at NASA, Teddy, who is usually very careful, decides that if they want to get the Iris supply probe to Watney on time, they won't do the normal inspections. By doing this, they send the probe into space with a bad bolt that comes loose and throws it off balance. Iris goes down into the water. The head of the China National Space Administration, Guoming, contacts Teddy and offers to let NASA change the Chinese probe Tianxin so that it can send supplies to Watney. Rich Purnell, an astrodynamicist, has found a way for Hermes to get back to Mars in time for a flyby on Sol 549. The Rich Purnell maneuver sends a reinforcement ship to Hermes with the help of Tianxin. Watney would need to find the Ares 4 MAV, make changes to it, and use it to get to Hermes. Teddy has to choose between the Purnell maneuver and Iris 2, which is the plan to send food to Watney on the Tianxin. Even though the Purnell maneuver has a better chance of working than Iris 2, it puts 6 lives at risk instead of 1. Teddy decides to remain with Iris. Mitch thinks Teddy made the wrong choice, so he tells the Hermes team about the Purnell maneuver. The team chooses to do the Purnell maneuver even though NASA has told them not to. NASA tells Watney about the new plan, and Watney starts making changes to both rovers so he can take the big 3, the air regulator, oxygenator, and water reclaimer, with him on his trip to the Ares 4 MAV. He turns one of the rovers into a trailer so he can bring the big 3 with him. Watney sends an electrical charge to Pathfinder's body by mistake while he is working on the changes, which fries its electronics. Pathfinder can't be put back live in any way. Watney sends Morse code notes to NASA with rocks and keeps making changes to the rover. The Tianxin resupply probe docks successfully on Hermes, and Johansson and Beck are falling in love. Once Watney gets the rovers to work together, he makes a bedroom tent out of cloth that he can attach to the hatch of one of the rovers. Then he goes to Schiaparelli and the site of MAV-4. Venkat understands that Watney's path will take him through a dust storm in Arabia Terra that will block 80% of the sunlight, leaving him without enough power to even run life support. Because the change will be so slow, Watney probably won't notice it until he's well into the storm. Watney starts to notice that his batteries aren't holding a charge as well as normal, and he finally figures out that he's in a dust storm. Watney figures out that the storm is to his north and moving west, so he can dodge it by going south and then east. Schiaparelli is to the southeast, so Watney won't have to go too far out of his way. Watney is able to get around the dust storm, but as he drives into the Schiaparelli crater, the rover rolls and the trailer comes away and flips. Watney is able to get the rover and trailer back on their wheels and fix the tow hook in 3 days. He keeps going to Ares for MAV. Once he gets there, he can use the radio on the MAV to talk to NASA and Hermes. Bruce and Venkat tell Watney how to change the MAV and use his water and pee to make more hydrogen fuel by electrolyzing them. Watney takes out all the extra gear, backup communication systems, and life support systems from the MAV to make it lighter. He will wear his EVA suit for the flight. Martinez will handle the MAV from a distance, so Watney takes the keys out of the MAV. Finally, Watney takes off the ship's nose and puts hab cloth over the hole. During the launch, the cloth comes loose and starts flapping, which slows the MAV's rise. On Hermes, Johansson tells Lewis that the MAV will get into orbit, but that it will be 68 kilometers away when it gets there. It will take them 39 minutes to get to intercept. They can get close enough to the MAV to reach Watney at intercept by using the ion engines and altitude rockets, but they will be going much too fast. Lewis tells Martinez to use the ion engines and altitude rockets while NASA scientists listen in but can't help. The Hermes team then seals the bridge and the room with the reactors. Vogel makes a pipe bomb and uses it to break through the ship's nose-mounted vehicle port. The force of the air leaving the ship slows it down enough to make the rescue risky but doable. When Hermes gets to intercept, Beck uses a link to get off the ship and go to Watney. The two guys get back to the ship in one piece. People party everywhere on Earth. Watney's parents hug in Chicago. Teddy is getting ready to talk to the press. Beck puts a patch on Watney's broken ribs from the climb, and Watney says hello to the rest of the team. Even though Watney is tired, dirty, hurt, and hungry, this is the best day of his life.
About the author. Weir was born in the same year as the last 2 Apollo missions. He grew up in California. His father was a particle scientist and his mother was an electronics engineer, so he was always interested in science and technology. Weir went to UC San Diego and studied computer programming. In his free time, he started writing stories. He worked as a computer programmer after college, but on his website, he kept writing science fiction and fantasy. He also wrote Casey and Andy, a webcomic that is kind of based on his life. Weir lives and writes in California.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.